Maria Rodriguez wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. At 32, she lived a quiet life as a librarian in her small town. Her days revolved around books, coffee breaks, and solving crossword puzzles during slow hours at work. She liked her routine. It was predictable, safe, and comfortable. But deep down, there was this tiny voice inside her that whispered for something more, something different, something exciting. One restless evening, while scrolling through YouTube videos, Maria stumbled upon clips of mixed martial arts fights. She watched fighters grappling on the ground using techniques that looked almost like choreographed dance moves but with raw power behind them. One video caught her attention. It featured Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ, where smaller opponents could take down bigger ones using clever strategies and precise movements. Something about it intrigued her. Maybe it was the idea of turning weakness into strength, or simply stepping into a world completely foreign to her. Whatever it was, Maria decided, right then and there, she would try BJJ. The next day after work, Maria found herself standing outside a local dojo. It wasn't fancy, just a simple building with faded paint and a sign that read Iron Fist Gym. She hesitated for a moment before walking in. Inside, the air smelled faintly of sweat and rubber mats. The room buzzed with energy. Men and women moved across the floor, twisting, rolling, and grappling with each other. Some laughed between drills, others grunted with effort. An instructor shouted commands from the corner, his voice echoing off the walls. Maria felt out of place immediately. Everyone else seemed so confident, so fit. They wore sleek uniforms called jiz, tied neatly with colorful belts that signified their rank. Meanwhile, Maria had borrowed an old pair of guy pants from a friend. They were slightly too big, and paired them with a plain gray t-shirt. Her sneakers squeaked awkwardly as she stepped onto the mat. Every eye turned toward her. "Class," the instructor said, raising his hand to get everyone's attention. "This is Maria. She'll be joining us today." A few polite nods greeted her, but most people just stared. Someone snickered quietly, though not quietly enough. A tall guy, standing near the edge of the mat, leaned over to his buddy and muttered loud enough for Maria to hear. "What's this? Bring your mom to work day?" Maria froze for a second, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. She didn't know what to say, so she forced a smile instead. If they wanted to laugh at her, fine. She'd come here to learn, not to win any popularity. Contests. The instructor gave her a quick rundown of basic rules and etiquette, then paired her up with another beginner for warm-ups. As Maria fumbled through stretches and drills, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Some students whispered to each other when they thought she wasn't looking. Others outright smirked whenever she made a mistake, which happened often. Rolling on the mat felt unnatural, like her body refused to cooperate no matter how hard she tried. By the end of the session, she was exhausted, sore, and utterly humiliated. But despite all that, Maria kept coming back. There was something oddly satisfying about pushing herself beyond her limits, even if it meant falling flat on her face half the time. And maybe, just maybe, proving those doubters wrong, even if only to herself, was worth every bruise and drop of sweat. As she drove home that night, replaying the day's events in her mind, Maria realized something important. She didn't care what anyone else thought. Sure, they might see her as an outsider now, but she had nothing to lose by sticking it out. After all, she reminded herself, Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither were black belts. It was a chilly Tuesday evening when everything changed for Maria. The dojo buzzed with its usual energy, students warming up, instructors shouting corrections, and the faint smell of sweat hanging in the air. Maria had been coming to class regularly for months now, but she still felt like an outsider looking in. Sure, she'd made some progress, learned a few techniques, and even managed to hold her own during sparring sessions occasionally. But deep down, she knew she wasn't anywhere close to matching the skill level of the more experienced students. That night, the instructor announced they'd be focusing on submissions, a topic Maria both dreaded and secretly looked forward to. Submissions were tricky. They required precision, timing, and confidence, qualities she didn't think she possessed yet. As the instructor demonstrated an arm bar from guard, Maria watched intently, soaking in every detail. He explained how leverage was key, how you didn't need brute strength to make it work, just proper positioning and control. When it came time to practice, Maria paired up with one of the newer students, someone around her skill level. They took turns trying the move, laughing whenever they messed up or accidentally let their partner escape. For once, Maria felt comfortable. She could feel herself improving, little by little. By the end of the drill, she had executed the armbar, cleanly twice, not perfectly, but well enough to earn a nod of approval from the instructor. After the technique portion of the class, it was time for live sparring. This was the part Maria dreaded most. While practicing specific moves was manageable, sparring was unpredictable. Anything could happen, and more often than not, Maria found herself overwhelmed by opponents who were faster, stronger, and more experienced. Still, she stepped onto the mat without hesitation, determined to face whatever came her way. The first few rounds went as expected. Maria got swept, pinned, and submitted multiple times. Each tap-out left her frustrated but also motivated to try harder next time. Then, halfway through the session, something unexpected happened. The instructor called out pairs for the next round, and Maria heard her name alongside someone else's. When she turned to see who her partner would be, her stomach dropped. It was him, the cocky black belt who never missed an opportunity. To mock her. He walked over with that same smug grin he always wore, slapping the mat loudly as he settled into position. "All right, librarian," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see if all those late nights watching YouTube videos paid off." Maria clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay calm. She knew what he was doing. He was trying to get inside her head to rattle her before they even started. But this time, she wasn't going to let him. She took a deep breath, bowed respectfully, and assumed her stance. As soon as the round began, he charged forward, clearly expecting to dominate her within seconds. Maria reacted instinctively, pulling guard and wrapping her legs around him. He laughed, thinking it was another amateur mistake. "Oh, good choice," he sneered. "Now I can just crush you from here." But Maria didn't respond. Instead, she focused on the basics, the very thing she'd drilled tirelessly at home. She controlled his posture, using her arms to break his alignment and create space. When he dove forward, attempting to pass her guard, she seized the opportunity. With smooth, deliberate movements, she locked in the armbar she'd practiced earlier that night. Time seemed to slow down. She felt his arm trapped between her legs, his body weight shifting as he realized what was happening. Before he could react, she extended her hips, applying pressure exactly where it needed to go. 14 seconds. That's all it took. He tapped furiously, his face red with shock and embarrassment. The room fell silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing, to stare. Even the instructor paused mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open slightly. Maria released the hold immediately, sitting up and bowing to signal the end of the round. Her heart raced, not from exertion, but from disbelief. Had that really just happened? Did she just submit a black belt? For a moment, no one said anything. Then, slowly, murmurs spread throughout the gym. Students exchanged glances, some whispering excitedly while others simply stared in awe. The black belt sat there for a second, rubbing his arm as if to confirm it was still attached. Finally, he looked up at Maria and muttered, "Well, damn." Maria didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to apologize, to downplay what had happened. But another part of her, the part that had spent countless hours practicing and pushing through pain, felt a surge of pride. She smiled faintly and nodded, acknowledging his respect. Word traveled fast. By the end of the class, everyone was talking about it. "Did you see that?" one student whispered to another. "She caught him in like 10 seconds. Another chimed in, "I can't believe it, she's only been here a few months." Even the instructor approached her after class, shaking his head in amazement. "That was incredible," he said. "You've come such a long way. Keep this up and you'll be unstoppable." Later that night, as Maria drove home, She replayed the moment over and over in her mind. 14 seconds. That's all it took to silence the doubters, to prove to herself that she belonged. She thought about how far she'd come since her first day at the dojo, when she'd felt so out of place and unwelcome. Back then, she'd been ridiculed, underestimated, and dismissed. Now people were calling her inspiring. But what struck her most was the reaction of the black belt himself. After class, he'd sought her out, his usual arrogance replaced with genuine humility. "Hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "That was, pretty impressive. Guess I underestimated you." Maria shrugged modestly. "Thanks, I'm just here to learn." And she meant it. Submitting him hadn't been about revenge or proving a point. It was about growth. About showing herself that she was capable of more than anyone, including herself, had given her credit for. That moment wasn't just a victory on the mat. It was a turning point in her journey, a reminder that perseverance pays off in ways you can't predict. As she climbed into bed that night, exhausted but exhilarated, Maria realized something important. Jiu-Jitsu wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about resilience, discipline, and self-discovery. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly unstoppable. The ripple effect of Maria's submission spread faster than she could have imagined. By the next class, the entire dojo seemed to know what had happened. Students whispered about it in corners, some even replaying the moment to each other as if they'd been there themselves. 14 seconds, one guy muttered while tying his belt. "I didn't think anyone could tap him that fast." Another chimed in. "And she's only been training for a few months? Unreal." At first, Maria felt uneasy with all the attention. She wasn't used to being the center of conversation, especially not in a place where she'd once felt invisible. But as the days went on, something shifted. People started treating her differently, not just with respect but with curiosity and admiration. Newcomers approached her after class, asking for advice or tips. Experienced students offered pointers. During drills complimenting her technique, even the instructor began giving her more challenging partners during sparring sessions, pushing her to improve even further. One of the biggest changes came from the black belt himself, the same guy who had mocked her relentlessly since day one. After their infamous match, he seemed to soften around her. During warm-ups, he'd nod in acknowledgement when they passed each other. In drills, he stopped pairing her with beginners and instead worked with her directly, offering constructive feedback. One evening after class, he pulled her aside. "Look," he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I owe you an apology. I've been, well, kind of a jerk to you since you got here. You didn't deserve that." Maria blinked, surprised by his sudden candor. For so long, she'd seen him as this untouchable figure, someone who exuded confidence and superiority. Now, standing before her, he looked almost vulnerable. "It's okay," she replied softly. "I get it. Everyone has doubts sometimes." He shook his head. "No, it's not okay. I let my ego get in the way and I treated you like you didn't belong here. But you proved me wrong, in 14 seconds flat." He chuckled at the memory, shaking his head again. "Honestly, losing to you was the best thing that could have happened to me. It reminded me why I started jiu-jitsu in the first place, to grow, to learn, not to dominate." From that moment on, their dynamic changed completely. The black belt became one of Maria's biggest supporters, cheering her on during tough matches, and offering encouragement when she doubted herself. He even invited her to join a small group of advanced students for extra training sessions outside of regular classes. At first, Maria hesitated, unsure if she was ready for such a step. But with his reassurance and her growing confidence, she accepted. Training with the advanced group pushed Maria to new heights. The pace was faster, the techniques more complex, and the sparring sessions far more intense. There were moments when she felt overwhelmed, when the pressure threatened to crush her resolve. But every time she wanted to quit, she reminded herself of how far she'd come. She thought about that armbar, about the stunned silence that followed, about the respect she'd earned through sheer determination. And slowly, She began holding her own against opponents who once intimidated her. Beyond the mat, Maria noticed subtle changes in her daily life. Her posture improved. She no longer hunched over books or slouched at her desk. Her movements became more deliberate, more confident. Co-workers at the library commented on her transformation, saying she seemed more assertive, more willing to take charge. Friends noticed too, remarking on how much happier and more self-assured she appeared. One afternoon, a co-worker asked her outright, "What's going on with you lately? You seem different." Maria smiled, thinking carefully before answering. "I guess I'm just learning to push myself," she said, "trying things I never thought I could do." Her co-worker raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Maria hesitated, then laughed lightly. "Jiu-Jitsu," she admitted. "It's hard to explain, but it's teaching me a lot about myself." Her co-worker looked skeptical. "Isn't that like fighting? Seems dangerous." "It's not just about fighting," Maria explained. "It's about problem-solving, patience, and perseverance. It's about proving to yourself that you're stronger than you think." Her co-worker nodded slowly, though still looking unsure. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up, you look great." As the weeks turned into months, Maria continued to evolve both inside and outside the gym. She earned her blue belt, a milestone that brought tears to her eyes, and celebrated quietly with close friends from the dojo. They threw her a small party, complete with cake and laughter, congratulating her on her hard work and dedication. For Maria, the belt wasn't just a symbol of progress. It was proof that persistence pays off no matter where you start. But perhaps the most rewarding part of her journey was seeing how she inspired others. New students joined the dojo regularly, many of them hesitant and unsure, much like she had been. Whenever she saw someone struggling, she made a point to offer words of encouragement. "Trust me," she'd say with a smile. "If I can do it, so can you." One evening after class, a shy teenager approached her nervously. Hi," the girl stammered. "I just wanted to say, you're really inspiring. Watching you makes me believe I can stick with this too." Maria felt a lump form in her throat. She remembered being in the girl's shoes, feeling out of place and doubting herself. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Just keep showing up. That's all it takes." As she walked home that night, Maria reflected on how much her life had changed since she first stepped onto the mat. What started as a simple desire to try something new had blossomed into a passion that transformed her in ways she never expected. Jiu-Jitsu wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a part of who she was. And she knew, without a doubt, that she'd only scratched the surface of what she could achieve. For Maria, the journey was far from over. But as she lay in bed that night, replaying the day's events in her mind, she realized something important. She wasn't just learning jiu-jitsu. She was learning how to live with courage, resilience, and unwavering determination. As the months rolled by, Maria continued to grow, not just in skill, but in confidence and presence. The shy, uncertain woman who had walked into the dojo all those months ago was almost unrecognizable now. She carried herself differently. Her shoulders squared, her steps steady, her eyes focused. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was deeply personal. Jiu-Jitsu had taught her more than how to execute an armbar or escape a chokehold. It had taught her how to face challenges head-on, how to push through discomfort, and how to believe in herself even when others doubted her. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, the instructor pulled Maria aside. "I need to talk to you," he said, his tone serious but warm. He gestured for her to follow him to a quiet corner of the gym where they wouldn't be interrupted. Maria felt a flicker of nervousness as she sat down across from him. Had she done something wrong? Was he going to tell her she needed to work harder? Instead, he smiled and leaned forward slightly. "You've come a long way since your first day here," he began. "And I don't just mean technically. You've grown as a person, and that's reflected in how you train, how you interact with others, and how you carry yourself. I think it's time we started thinking about promoting you to purple belt." Maria's jaw dropped. Purple belt? That seemed like such a distant milestone, something reserved for people who were practically experts. Sure, she'd earned her blue belt months ago, but moving up again felt almost impossible. "Are you sure?" she asked hesitantly. "I mean, I still have so much to learn," the instructor chuckled. "Of course you do, we all do. But earning a new belt isn't about knowing everything, it's about showing growth, dedication, and leadership. And let me tell you, you've shown all three. You inspire the newer students without even realizing it. They see what you've accomplished and think, if she can do it, maybe I can too." Maria felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't thought of herself as a role model before, but hearing the instructor say those words made her realize how far she'd come. When she first started, she'd been so focused on surviving each class that she hadn't considered the impact she might have on others. Now, looking around the gym, she saw glimpses of herself in the newcomers, the awkwardness, the frustration, the quiet determination. She wanted to help them the way others had helped her. Promotion day arrived a few weeks later. The ceremony was simple yet meaningful. Students gathered in a circle, clapping rhythmically as Maria knelt in the center. The instructor called out her name and presented her with the purple belt, tying it around her waist with care. As he did, he said something that stuck with her. "This belt represents not just what you've achieved, but what you're capable of achieving. Wear it proudly, but never stop striving." Afterward, the group celebrated with pizza and laughter, sharing stories and congratulating Maria on her accomplishment. One of the newer students, a young man who had joined only a month earlier, approached her nervously. "Can I ask you something?" he said, fidgeting with the hem of his gi. "Sure," Maria replied with an encouraging smile. He hesitated before blurting out, "Do you ever feel like you don't belong here? Like everyone else is better than you?" Maria nodded slowly, understanding exactly where he was coming from. "All the time," she admitted. "Even now, sometimes I walk into this gym and wonder if I'm good enough. But here's the thing, you don't have to be perfect to belong, you just have to show up and give it your best shot. Every single person in this room has felt the same way you're feeling right now. Trust me, you'll get there." The young man looked relieved, as though hearing those words lifted a weight off his shoulders. Maria realized then that her journey wasn't just about her own growth, it was about helping others find theirs too. Outside the gym, Maria noticed changes in her daily life that went beyond posture or confidence. Challenges at work no longer intimidated her the way they once did. When faced with a difficult task or a disagreement with a coworker, she approached it calmly and strategically, much like she did during sparring sessions. She learned to assess situations objectively, break them down into manageable parts, and tackle them one step at a time. Her relationships improved too. Friends and family remarked on how much happier and more grounded she seemed. Her younger brother, who had always teased her for being the quiet one, joked that she was starting to scare him with her newfound assertiveness. "What happened to my sister?" he asked playfully during a family dinner. Maria laughed. "She found Jiu-Jitsu." Beyond the personal growth, Maria also discovered a deeper sense of community within the dojo. What had once felt like an intimidating environment now felt like home. She knew everyone's strengths and weaknesses, celebrated their victories, and supported them through setbacks. In turn, they did the same for her. Whether it was cheering someone on during a tough match or offering advice after a bad day, the bond between them was undeniable. One afternoon, the instructor announced that the gym would host a friendly tournament for local schools. It wasn't mandatory, but participants were encouraged to sign up if they felt ready. Maria hesitated at first. Competing in front of strangers sounded terrifying, especially given her history of self-doubt. But something inside her whispered, why not? She had trained hard, pushed past countless obstacles, and proven herself time and again. Maybe it was time to test her skills outside the comfort of her own dojo. She signed up, choosing to compete in the beginner division despite holding a purple belt. After all, this wasn't about winning, it was about stepping out of her comfort zone and embracing the unknown. On the day of the tournament, nerves threatened to overwhelm her. Her hands trembled as she tied her belt, and her stomach churned as she watched other competitors take the mat. But when her name was called, she took a deep breath, stepped onto the mat, and reminded herself of the lessons she'd learned along the way. Each match was a battle, both physically and mentally. Some opponents were stronger, faster, or more experienced. Others relied on aggression, trying to overpower her rather than outthink her. But Maria stayed calm, focusing on fundamentals and staying adaptable. By the end of the day, she hadn't won every match, but she had earned respect. Judges complimented her technique, and fellow competitors sought her out afterward to shake her hand. Driving home that night, Maria reflected on the experience. Winning medals wasn't the goal. It never had been. The real victory lay in proving to herself that she could handle whatever came her way, whether it was ridicule, doubt, or fear. She thought about the shy teenager who had inspired her to try jiu-jitsu in the first place, about the black belt who had underestimated her, about the instructor who believed in her potential. Each of them had played a role in shaping her journey, and she was grateful for all of it, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Jiu-jitsu had become more than just a hobby or a sport. It was a way of life, a constant reminder that growth comes from discomfort, that strength isn't measured by belts or accolades, and that resilience is built one small victory at a time. For Maria, the journey was far from over. But as she drifted off to sleep that night, she knew one thing for certain. She was ready for whatever came next. Years had passed since Maria first stepped into the dojo, wide-eyed and uncertain. The shy librarian who once doubted her place in the world of jiu-jitsu was now a brown belt, a rank that symbolized not just technical mastery, but also leadership, humility, and resilience. Her journey hadn't been easy, but every bruise, every setback, and every moment of self-doubt had shaped her into someone she barely recognized anymore. And yet, she still saw glimpses of that timid woman within herself, the part of her that needed constant reminders to keep going, to trust the process, and to believe in her own strength. Now, standing at the front of the dojo with a group of beginners gathered around her, Maria felt a sense of responsibility she'd never imagined. She wasn't just teaching techniques. She was passing on lessons she'd learned the hard way, about patience, perseverance, and finding confidence in unexpected places. As she demonstrated a basic guard sweep, her voice carried across the room, steady and clear. "Remember," she said, pausing to look each student in the eye, "it's not about being perfect right away. It's about showing up even when it feels impossible." One of the students, a teenage girl with glasses and a nervous smile, caught Maria's attention. There was something familiar about her demeanor, something that reminded Maria of herself all those years ago. During breaks between drills, the girl lingered near the edges of the mat, fidgeting with the sleeves of her oversized jai. When Maria approached her after class, the girl hesitated before speaking. "I don't think I'm cut out for this," she admitted softly, avoiding eye contact. "Everyone else seems so good. I can't even do the warm-ups without messing up." Maria smiled knowingly. "You know, I used to feel the exact same way," she said, sitting down beside the girl. "When I started, I thought I'd made a huge mistake. People laughed at me, and honestly, I didn't blame them. I was terrible. But here's the thing. Nobody starts out great. Not even the black belts. They fell, they got frustrated, and they kept coming back. That's what makes them strong." The girl looked up, her expression softening slightly. "But what if I never get better?" "You will," Maria replied firmly. "It won't happen overnight, and there'll be days when you want to quit. But if you stick with it, you'll surprise yourself. Trust me, I've seen it happen over and over again." As the weeks went by, Maria kept a close eye on the girl, offering encouragement whenever she struggled. She remembered how much it meant to have someone believe in her during her darkest moments, and she wanted to pay that forward. Slowly but surely, the girl began to improve. Not dramatically, but enough to spark a glimmer of confidence. One evening, after successfully executing a technique during practice, she turned to Maria with a grin. "I did it!" she exclaimed, her face lighting up with pride. Maria nodded, smiling back. "See? Told you." Teaching wasn't the only role Maria embraced as she progressed in her jiu-jitsu journey. Outside the gym, she became known as someone who could handle anything life threw at her. Challenges at work no longer intimidated her. Instead, she tackled them head-on, breaking problems into smaller pieces and addressing them systematically, much like she did during sparring sessions. Friends and coworkers often remarked on her calmness under pressure, asking how she managed to stay so composed. "It's all about mindset," she'd explain. "You focus on what you can control and let go of the rest." Her transformation extended beyond her career. Family gatherings, once filled with awkward silences and polite small talk, now buzzed with energy thanks to Maria's newfound assertiveness. Relatives who used to dismiss her opinions now sought her advice, impressed by her ability to navigate difficult conversations with grace and poise. Even her younger brother, who had always teased her for being quiet, joked that he might have to start calling her the boss. But perhaps the most rewarding aspect of Maria's evolution was the legacy she left behind at the dojo. Over time, she became a mentor, not just to beginners, but to intermediate students as well. Newcomers admired her dedication, while seasoned practitioners respected her technical skill and willingness to share knowledge. When the instructor announced plans to expand the gym and bring in more coaches, he approached Maria directly. "We need someone like you," he said. "Someone who understands what it's like to struggle but also knows how to inspire others." Maria accepted the offer without hesitation. Coaching gave her a deeper sense of purpose, allowing her to guide others through the same struggles she'd faced. She taught them not just how to execute moves, but also how to embrace failure, overcome fear, and find joy in the grind. Watching her students grow reminded her of her own journey: the late-night practice sessions, the YouTube tutorials, the countless hours spent drilling transitions in her living room. Every tap-out, every victory, and every moment of doubt had led her here. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Maria found herself sitting alone on the mat, reflecting on everything she'd achieved. The gym was quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights above the only sound breaking the silence. She ran her fingers over the worn fabric of her GI, thinking about all the memories stitched into its fibers. This place had become her second home, a i.e. sanctuary where she discovered strength she never knew she had. As she sat there, lost in thought, the instructor joined her, lowering himself onto the mat with a sigh. "You've done incredible things here," he said, his tone warm and reflective. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who walks through these doors. You've set an example that'll last long after you're gone." Maria shook her head modestly. "I'm just doing what you guys did for me," she said. "If it weren't for people believing in me, I wouldn't be here today." The instructor chuckled. "That's exactly why you're so good at this. You remember what it's like to need support and you give it freely. That's rare." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching shadows stretch across the walls as the sun dipped below the horizon. Finally, Maria stood up, brushing dust off her pants. "Well," she said with a grin, "I should probably head home. Tomorrow's another day." And indeed it was. For Maria, every new day brought fresh opportunities to learn, to teach, to grow. Jiu-Jitsu had given her more than she ever dreamed possible: confidence, community, and a renewed sense of purpose. But most importantly, it had taught her that true strength comes not from dominating others but from lifting them up. As she drove home that night, replaying the day's events in her mind, Maria realized something profound. Her story wasn't just about submitting a black belt or earning belts of her own. It was about resilience, the kind that comes from falling down and getting back up, again and again. It was about proving to herself that she was capable of greatness, even when no one else believed in her. And it was about inspiring others to do the same. For Maria, the journey was far from over. But as she pulled into her driveway, she smiled to herself, knowing one thing for certain: she was unstoppable.